you think of a time when you reacted poorly to an inconvenient situation? Maybe a flat tire, bad grade, maybe your phone battery died. What did you learn about yourself from the way that you reacted? Oftentimes, the best judge of character is how someone responds to an adverse situation. From beginning to end, the Bible teaches us about how our attitudes and actions indicate the contents of our hearts. And Jonah is no different. Even more, it introduces us to a God who faithfully will go and introduce those specific things in our lives that are not in submission to Him. From the very start of Jonah, we will see these points made very clear. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Get up, go to the great city of Nineveh, and preach against it, because their evil has come up before me. What do we see from the text? First, we recognize that God responds to Jonah by saying, go to Nineveh and preach against them. They're a sinful people, but I want you to deliver the good news to them. Now, Nineveh was the capital city of Assyria. It was a great empire, but the Assyrians were tough people. They were torturers. So the Israelites hated the Assyrians. Thus, the reaction that we have from Jonah is a viable one. But how does God want Jonah to respond to these people? Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. Wait, now we have a prophet who is fleeing from the presence of God? Isn't that crazy? So Jonah's response wasn't that of a loving and compassionate God. Jonah was only responding because of his own personal feelings toward the Assyrians. Interesting, Jonah really doesn't make a connection between Israel and God. Years ago, when Israel was unlovable, God embraced the people and told them, I'm going to make you my people. So it can be understood that the response that Jonah had toward the people of Nineveh was in contrast to God's nature. So how did Jonah respond? By not loving others. Do we see that in our daily lives? Do we see that in our church? God's response to people is through compassion. It's very similar when we look at Jesus' life, and it says that he felt compassion for people. He was moved with compassion. He said, I didn't come for the people who are well. I came for those who are unwell. And the church, many times, we've determined within our own hearts who's deserving of God's grace, which is only based on how comfortable we are with engaging with them. Can you imagine if God's response was even remotely close to the way that we respond toward others? Many of us would not be saved. Matter of fact, none of us would be saved. That may be a hard truth, but our response toward people should resemble that of God's response to people, a response of compassion and mercy. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. Jonah ran. You know, you've messed up when you try to escape from the presence of God, when you run to get away from the face of God. You see, Jonah's response is in complete disobedience to God. It teaches us that Jonah had a heart problem, that Jonah was battling within himself about how to love broken and lost people. Do you believe the church needs to work harder at being more effective by being more loving and compassionate? It's funny, we, the church, are known more for what we're against than what we're for. So when Jesus looks upon people, again, he looks upon them and feels compassion. He looks at them like a sheep without a shepherd. Do we look at lost people that way? Many times, our response to broken and lost people is unforgiving, bitterness, anger, and we walk in self-centeredness. We try and make people into our own image. We try to make them more savable, which is a whole nother gospel. But God demonstrates his own love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus, many times, was ostracized because of the people that he spent time with. He spent time with the worst of the worst, while the religious leaders were standing off to the side and judging him. Yet, Jesus never allowed the judging to change his response of love and compassion toward others. I pray that God will make us more compassionate, that he'll make us more loving, more merciful. God is going to have to perform heart surgery in order to reveal what you never believed was there before. Then we will have to change. When change happens, we will be able to reach out to those who God has called us to reach while he's continuously changing us.